where do we sell after? Or we produce and we say, where do we sell after? So you can sell and buy and sell. This is what is happening. If you sell, you have to be able to buy. You can sell at 100, buy at 50, you make a profit of 50. Gross profit of 50. You can sell at 50 and then look for the product, and it happens that the market is at 100, you lose. But you have also to deliver. That's why when you finance under the mechanism that we are going to explain, you have to make sure that the product that you sell, you are able to purchase it below your selling price. So you have the first way of selling, spot. Forward, that means you sell in advance. Price to be fixed, that means you sell the quality basis, and then the parity price is done, the basis price is done by the exchange, if there is an exchange. If you want in Africa to develop more and more and grow and be responsible, you have to be able to create your own exchange. So you don't depend on people to look for market. The market comes to you. This is another challenge. Then you have the future. That means you deliver at the exchange against a delivery system. I have covered the selling side. Within the selling side, you have the weight and the quality parameter. And the weight and quality parameter depends on the quality already of the raw material, because it depends, and the raw material will create the finished product. Most of the time, you sell finished product, you don't sell raw material only. You have another element, the transport side. Most of the time, the shipping line is going to say, I give you a box, you put the cargo inside, whatever arrives at arrival is not my responsibility. You have the transporter, he give you a truck, what you put on the truck is not his responsibility. But it is his driver. So you can see the risk that you are taking, because you put good quality in his box in terms of shipping, or good quality in his truck, but when the good arrive at arrival, there is a problem. Him, he finances transaction. It doesn't finance balance sheet. Then, you have to mitigate this kind of risk. In order to mitigate the right kind of risk, you use insurance. Then the insurance is going to say, me, I insure cargo, this and this and this. But what is really important for him is the quality and the weight be insured. And you have to include the misappropriation. What is misappropriation? Misappropriation means that the goods being dropped in the warehouse, since we are in developing country, there is sometimes mysterious disappearance. You don't know, but the good disappear. Then the insurance be able to protect that, because him want to be protected. Now, I cover the contract also. When you sell it forward, you have to have a time limit, because the contract has a time. So you have the time, the quality, the weight, the quantity, the logistic, the insurance, and the legal aspect. At the end of the day, either you are as trader, either you are the horses, or you be the horse rider. So you make sure that in your contract, you are the horses. So you dictate your terms and not be dictated. It's not every time easy to not to be dictated, but it happens that you can. You go slowly and slowly. This is your business. You know what to do. Now I'll give the floor to Mr. Zanmeyer. In certain aspects, I will intervene. In certain other aspects, he will intervene. What is really important is going to cover the typical structure, the lender rationale, the client rationale, the risk matrix, the conventional supply chain. That means you sell, you buy, how we can finance, based on cargo. Warehouse receipt finance, import finance, export finance, and the floor will be for questions. Thank you very much.
Andre, thanks very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we are at a very real risk of this becoming a classical example of death by PowerPoint. So what I will not do is I'm not going to go through every single slide in detail. The aim of the presentation is to give you a background on what can be done if you think differently. And I think the whole thread that we can run through this presentation is the fact that it's not based on a balance sheet. Andre mentioned it. In fact, just to give you a practical example, I have in South Africa about 450 commercial farmers on my book. I have literally not seen one single balance sheet. The value of the financing is, at this point in time, almost 1 billion rand, which is $250 million. So just to give you an idea of what can be done, if you structure correctly, you don't have to see a balance sheet. You assess the ability of your operator, your client, your processor, and the players in the value chain to do what you expect them to do to manage your crop, your stock, your goods, or your trade in the facility. All right. Just typically in terms of the structure, and we saw that at the previous panel where we sat on, you got raw materials, naturally that is produced by fertilizer, seed, fuel, insecticide. You put in the ground, you've got a crop coming out of it, and we literally go as far back as financing that, and then take our risk in terms of will the crop grow. If the crop grows, I've got a commodity, I can sell it. If the crop doesn't grow, I've got insurance. I can cover myself and get repaid that way. We've got producers, that is typically a farmer or a producer of a typical commodity. I've got a storer, which is a crucial part of this, because in terms of logistics, you've got to first store the crop. You've got to bag it, you've got to culminate it, get it together, commingle it, and make sure you get the right quality and quantity. Then you've got your typical traders. Now these can be the Cargills, the Bungies, and all the Olams of this world, or it could be a typical local or regional trader on an African basis or wherever we are in the world. All right? Processors normally value add. Unfortunately, we have very few of these in Africa, and that's still something we need to work on. In Ivory Coast, Andre mentioned about the cocoa butter manufacturers. They do add value to the product, but they're normally international players that do that on their own turf, on their own conditions, and at their own price. And then actually the end user is normally the wholesalers. So then we kind of move out of the realm of trade finance, hence we stop there. All right. Sorry, just to go back. These blocks on the outside periphery, that's the products that we're going to be handling quickly, and I'll go through the slides and give you a brief idea of what to look at. Warehouse receipts finance is a product based on the fact that we recognize truly and purely the intrinsic value of the commodity. What I do there is I don't need an off-taker. If you have a crop, for instance, let's say a maize crop in a country like Zambia, typically what happens is we have a supply and demand curve. During harvest time, the price is very low because the supply is high and the demand is low, because we're sitting with every single farmer harvesting his crop, wanting cash to pay school fees and all the other duties and seeds and insecticide loans that he actually managed to get through the cultivation season. But he doesn't want to do that. He doesn't want to sell his crop at harvest time. He wants to hold his crop and wait for the price to stabilize, or hopefully get a bit higher than the low in terms of harvest time. We allow him to do that if he groups his crop together, and we do that for groups of farmers. We do it for millers. We do it for cooperatives. I'll get to the benefits of it later. And then invoice purchasing, something else. We purely buy an invoice on a discounted basis. And then supply chain finance, I will cover in detail. Export, import finance, what that does. Purely deviations in terms of little risk mitigants and tweaks that we put onto the product. Okay. Why does a lender do this? What is in it for a bank? And maybe if you go out to your respective countries, you can maybe talk to your banks about this, and I think that's also what we talked about with the ITC and the role they can play, is to help us to get this through to the banks and say, guys, but this is what you can do. These are the things you need to look at rather than get your credit committee to analyze a balance sheet in depth. Okay. All right, so we focus on the commodity rather than financing the trader. That's simple, we've discussed that. The products that we're going to basically do here is recognize intrinsic value. We talked about that. And I think what we actually looking at is to improve the bank's risk profile, because in terms of Basel II, you can actually show that you've got control over the stock. Now what it does for us as a bank is, if my capital reservation requirements are less, because I can show control, I can show that I've got notorious and first right over the stock, I can give my client a relatively cheaper pricing because of the fact that I need to reserve less capital. So that's the benefit for the client. All right? And basically, in terms of Basel II, the terminology is exclusive, continuous, and notorious control. These things you have